Welcome to Deep Dives with Dr. Dan, where the future of dentistry is built one conversation at a time. Powered by OrthoBrain, we bring you the leaders and innovators shaping the modern practice. I am your host, Dr. Dan. Let's dive in. On today's episode, let's dive deeper. Our guest is J.M. Ryerson, and he's going to talk with us about winning from within. J.M., we are so grateful to have you on the show. Thank you so much for generously giving us the time and sharing the knowledge.
Well, brother, thank you for having me as always, Dan. When I get a little Dan in my life, it always fills me up. It's just I love the interactions. But who am I guess is where I'll start. J.M. Ryerson, as you said, my company is Let's Go Win. And it is my fourth company that I've personally had a chance. I built and sold 3 companies in the financial service world. And what happened, Dan, is I actually wrote my first book, Let's Go Win, Keys to Living Your Best Life, for my 2 sons. My wife and I have 20 and 7, well, not quite, almost 17-year-old son. And the whole idea was, here's some lessons that perhaps you can utilize. And it's just taken me on this really cool path, which is Let's Go Win. You mentioned winning from within. It's a big part of what I believe in. And so I get a chance to advise companies. I happen to be blessed to be working with orthobrain as well, which it fulfills me. And on a daily basis, I get a chance to be a small part of inspiring people to live their best lives. So that's kind of me in a little, snippet. And like I said, I'm just blessed and honored to be here.
Well, JM, you said something that caught my attention right off the bat, and it really speaks to this message you share all the time about radical transparency. You immediately brought your sons into the story. Tell me a little bit about what inspired you to make a book in their honor.
Good question. I thought about when I lost my dad. One of the things that I wanted is I have so many questions, right? I questions that'll never be answered until I see him on the other side. And I had thought about that in terms of for my own kiddos. If my wife and I were happen to be hit by a bus, I want them to know some of these lessons that I learned along the way from my parents, grandparents, and a lot of mentors and authors, because I don't want them to skin their knees nearly as many times as I did along as any parent. You want what's best for your kids. So it was in that vein, Dan, that I said, what is a book that I can bring as much value to them as possible and make it so it's tangible, like lessons you could take away. And I remember I was only going to share it with them. And the woman I was working with said, well, you're selfish. And I said, what are you talking about? And she said, if you only share this episode with 2 people, you're selfish. And I said, you know what? You're right. And then we published the book, and it's taken my life in a different course than perhaps I had first envisioned, but I'm so grateful to be able to share it with my kids, because they are truly my family's everything to me, as I know it is for you.
Wow, JM. Thank you for sharing. I can't skip over the beginning of this whole message where you said that you lost your dad. And JM, are you comfortable talking a little bit about that and how it impacted your life and what role it had in making you what you are?
Yeah, I am. And it's actually, for those of you who don't know, that's how I found my way into the world of dentistry. So my dad took his own life just over 4 years ago now. And I don't want anyone to go through what my family and I went through. Now, my dad was not a dentist. I often get that question. He was not. But what I found, Dan, is when I was going to speak to a group, I did this research on dentistry, and I found that dentistry has the highest rate of suicide of any occupation in the country. And I thought, well, I don't understand, and B, this is more important than just helping them perform a little bit better, make more money in their practice. And it's in that vein that I've continued my work. I've just been called into this beautiful world of dentistry because of the mental health side of things. Yes, people hire me to help them grow their companies, and that's cool, man. I am good at it. For whatever reason, God gave me that gift. I will say that. But what I'm really passionate about is how are you doing from a holistic standpoint? How are you taking care of yourself? So to answer your question, Dan, that's how I lost my dad. It has forever shifted my perspective when it comes to we don't really know what's going on with someone, and it's given me an additional level and of I guess drive and incentive to reach out to other people and say, you know what, it's okay if you're not okay, because if you had a broken arm you would go to the doctor and they would put a cast on you. But there's this stigma when it comes to my head's not right, and if I could eradicate one thing, it's to say, look, that's okay. It's just another part that maybe we need some help with. So yeah, I'm passionate about it, Dan, and I get to work with folks on that every single day. Hopefully, reaching at least one, if not several thousand, to say you matter, you absolutely matter, and I want you to know if you're not okay, you have resources.
Wow. Uh, uh, Amazing that you had to go through that experience and then take it and leverage it so that you can share with others. So I appreciate that. Um, would you say that there's a connection between taking on a leadership role and having some of those call it mental health challenges that you referenced that dentists experience?
I hear often, Dan, people say leadership, it's really lonely at the top. And I've heard that saying so many times. And what I feel, I think it can be correct for some people, but it doesn't have to be. And you actually said the word radical transparency. One of the people I look up to, Ray Dalio, he's where I grabbed that from. And the part of his leadership is he believes in complete radical transparency. The only time you get in trouble at his firm is if you don't speak up. And I guess the point that what I would say to practice owners, dentists, anybody taking on a leadership role, if you look at it as in it's going to be lonely at the top, well, you're right. Or if you say it is going to be abundant and beautiful, and you're going to be right as well. Henry Ford, whether you think you're right or whether you can't think you can or can't, you're right is one of my favorites. And so when I think of that, yes, leadership can feel overwhelming if you don't let people in. And so one of the most profound leadership lessons I learned at my second company actually was I decided to be completely vulnerable. Just like sharing, with the audience, losing my dad, that wouldn't have been something I would have been probably comfortable with in my early to late 20s and into my 30s. But now I'm extremely open, and what I found is that leadership isn't lonely at the top. It's actually amazing, and it's really not even being at the top. It's just you're influencing people hopefully to perform at their highest level. But I understand the idea why people feel that way, and it's one of those things that I'm hoping to continue to influence other doctors or practice owners or whomever, that leadership can be an amazing place to be and to share your gifts, but we do need to kind of reframe the mind so that you can see it that way.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me, JM. Um, how do you feel about dentists as leaders? Meaning, most dentists are really expert at the technical aspects of dentistry. Our education was really light on leadership, management, accountability. Is that a contributor to some of the mental health issues carrying that load?
Yeah, I do think it's a part of it. Like you said, Dan, anybody that is a doctor, they went to school for a long time to be really good clinically at whatever they're doing. For instance, I'm never going to do a crown or a cavity, or I'm certainly not going to do an implant. Like I don't even understand how you guys do that. I mean, it's remarkable the work that you do. What I would also say is one of the things you're not taught in dental school is to be a leader, run a business, wear as many hats as you do. And so you are trying to wear several hats at the same time. And I think what happens is the additional pressure is if my hands aren't in a mouth, I'm no longer making money. And instead of taking this amazing intellectual property that you all have learned and sharing it with, let's say, an associate and growing your practice, some docs take on, well, if I'm not the one doing the work, I'm not making money. And so it becomes this very controlling thing in a very small, precise, taking care of very small teeth and to make it perfect. And so it's all these additional pressures that are building up when the truth is, if you're willing to say, you know what, this is what I'm great at, and this is where I need help. And what I find most of the great practice owners, they find that incredible office manager. They find that incredible lead hygienist. They find that incredible, and they're willing to share the workload to say, I'm really good here. Here's maybe where I'm struggling. And that's that radical transparency part. When you get comfortable doing that, now it's amazing how much you can grow and it not all fall on your shoulders. But whether it's through, a coach or, failing many times, which I've seen some practice owners, they just failed again and again until they finally got sick of it and said, I'm going to do it different. I want to reach more practice owners to say, look, there is a better way for you to do this and do what you're great at, but let's also allow you to grow in your leadership capacity.
And so you and I have a passion for continuous learning. I mean, talk about the infinite game, that learning. And I want to spend a little time in this area because I believe most of us dentist folks are desirous of being great leaders and doing it and still maintaining great mental health and physical health. How do you learn how to be a great leader? And talk to us a little bit about that, JM.
Yeah, it's interesting what I found with a lot of practice owners. If you were to put up if we were to go to an event and you were to say, let's learn about leadership over here, or we're going to go do this clinical work on this side, you're probably going to have 90% of the people in the clinical room and about maybe 10% in the leadership space. And it's interesting because obviously being a great clinician is really important. And, always staying on top of all the amazing technology things that are coming and all of that. I understand. But there is this, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a fear or if it's, I need to be the best clinician. That's why people come to see me. Well, if you actually stop and think, why do people come see you? You're actually in a people business. Yes, you have to be good at your craft. There's no question. I'm not going to argue that. However, we also want to learn how to lead, whether it be our staff, the patients walking through the door. The better you can become at that, the more that you're going to have higher retention. And here's the crazy thing: the more they actually will give you grace. If let's just say you weren't clinically 1,000% right on, maybe you were 998%. When you have those soft skills, I'm using air quotes, Dan, those soft skills of connecting with another human being, building genuine rapport, genuinely caring about that patient, not just taking care of their teeth, that's when you can see your practice really take off. So it's an interesting thing because we go to these events and you'll see, I want to hear more clinical. And I'm like, I get it. There's a lot to learn. However, if we could just take a bit of our time and effort and put it into like focusing on leadership, growing in terms of what are we doing for ourselves, which is a whole nother subject, right? When it comes to mental health, taking care of the doctor themselves, that's where I think we can really help a lot of practice owners and help them grow their practices substantially.
So that's great advice. I love it. I love the additional learning. Even for the doctors who take additional learning, we still stumble. What are the greatest stumbling blocks in front of doctors becoming great leaders?
Hmm. So here's the misnomer, and this is the challenge when it comes to most doctors. They were the best at school for the most part. They had the straight A's, then they went on to dental school and they were top of their class, and they have this whole perfectionist mentality.
Mhm.
Well, perfection in my opinion is the enemy of greatness, especially when it comes to leadership. You're going to fail. You're going to make mistakes, and you're going to that's the only way we grow in anything. If you and I were to start playing pickleball today, Dan, and let's just say you've never played it before, are we going to be, Ben Johns, the top pro right away? No, you're going to fail. You're going to hit it into the net. You're going to probably mess up the rules because there's some funky things because you're not born to be a great pickleball player, right? There's only a few of those savants out there that they were born to be great at, some sport. Leadership is not any different. In my opinion, are there some people that were predestined to be good leaders? Sure, but it still takes work. And so, what I would say to folks when it comes to it, just like you learned in dental school before you practice on a real person, you had to learn and you had to make mistakes and you had to get better at your craft. That's exactly the same thing with leadership. Now, if you're willing to share with your staff and your team, I'm working to be a better leader, how you could support that is to actually give me feedback on what I could do better. And if you're actually willing to listen to what they have to say without getting defensive, without saying, I'm the boss and therefore, which is that's the downfall, right? The ego gets involved and now we start to talk from a place of ego instead of a place of learning. If you're willing to say to your staff, to your patients, I'm getting better in this regard, please help. Your feedback is invaluable to my growth. You would be shocked at how fast you're able to grow. And here's the thing, doctors, it's not just you. I work with executives in all industries. The ego is a funny thing. And if you're just willing to have a little bit of feedback, you can grow that much faster.
Yeah, the ego, it can be empowering and that gives you ambition. It can certainly get in your way. And oftentimes I see that with leaders that are struggling inside of the practices. And it really it reminds me of when I was operating my clinical practice and I would have doctors come in to visit to see kind of how we do it. And one of the things they came away with was how frequently I delegated and how much I delegated. And they were astounded. And I explained to them that I found people that were put into the right position, they had the right skill sets and trained and educated, which are different things, training and educating, and did it over and over again until they could do certain things better than I could ever do them. And there was the power of leverage. And what came along with it was giving people autonomy, empowering them to be part of the practice. In other words, nobody felt that they worked for me, they worked with me. Tell me what you've seen when you've been helping leaders, if this is a common challenge.
So there's a lot to unpack in what you just said. Now, what Dan really unlocked eventually is freedom, because he wasn't the one that always had to be doing it. And when you empower people, when you truly say, you said the word delegate, and it's not the wrong word. It is accurate in many regards. But what I've seen you actually do, because I work again with your company, you empower people to say, look, here's the goal. I trust you that you're going to figure out. And then you don't micromanage. One of the biggest challenges I see is, well, I know it's going to get done this way if I do it. And immediately, if you say that, just know that your practice will only grow so far because there's only so many hours in the day that you can actually do it. Or if you have the security in who you are, what you can do, like Dan did, to say, I'm going to empower my, again, lead hygienist, my office manager, whomever I'm empowering and delegating it to knowing that they're going to make mistakes, right? It's not going to be done perfectly, and it certainly won't be done the way Dan would have done it. But when you do that, you allow yourself freedom, and growth comes with that. And one of my favorite quotes, Dan, and when I think of what you just said, it certainly applies. It's amazing what can get accomplished if no one cares who gets the credit. And if you stop and just think about that quote for a second, if you don't care if my hygienist gets all the credit and they don't say a word about Dr. Dan, if you can truly be okay with that, it's incredible what you're going to be able to accomplish, because now you're comfortable bringing in that next associate. Now you're comfortable growing your practice because, again, you are leveraging your intellectual ability, your knowledge, and you're starting to share it. And when you do that, now it's not all on your shoulders. So it's a beautiful example, Dan, and I hope more people really get comfortable doing it, because when you apply it, it can be awesome. And just know, again, you're going to scrape your knees a few. That's okay. That's part of it. That's just like learning to ride the bike or the pickleball. That's hitting it into the net a couple times. That's how we get better at it.
Well, talk to us a little bit, JM, about the younger doctor who's going into practice. It's a younger doctor who's purchased a practice and they've joined senior doctor. Junior doctor may be the owner or a partner. How do they navigate those waters? They seem like they can be pretty choppy when there's a senior doctor that can either be extremely helpful or a bit of a barrier.
Yeah, there's this idea of mentorship I'm a big fan of, so we're clear. And I actually talked about this on my show previously, but I used to call it reverse mentorship, where it's not just the senior doctor that's going to help the new the practicing doctor, but both actually bring a lot to the table, because, again, technology has changed. Perhaps a younger doc knows social media for marketing. They bring a lot to the table. And so what I actually like to coin it now is reciprocal mentorship, where we are both going into this relationship saying, senior doc, I would love the wisdom and all of the challenges and mistakes. I would love for you to help me avoid some of those pitfalls. Additionally, the senior doc might want to know, hey, how do you stay in such great shape? How do you have so much energy? How do you operate Instagram to grow your practice? The litany of things that both sides can learn from one another is really remarkable. But you have to, again, be willing to kind of put your ego to the side as the senior doc and say, I can learn as much from this associate as I could from somebody practicing 40 years. If you can truly look at it from that space, now the waters aren't so choppy, because, again, now we're trying to accomplish whatever the goal is together, whether that is to retire the senior doctor or to take over the practice or whatever the goal is. Let's put the ego aside and let's focus on whatever the goal is that we're trying to obtain.
So well said. And wow, I wish that was something that I had heard early in my career. It would have saved a whole lot of heartache and going to the school of hard knocks, right? Let's move this discussion along. All right. Now we're talking to a doctor who has listened to everything you've ever taught. They've read your books. They've been to your seminars. They're practicing what you preach. It's in their bones, and they're having wild success. They're having wild success from the perspective of the outside world. But yet maybe there's something inside them. Maybe they're not really that total success when you look at it from a more global point of view. What are some of the signs? How do you help them?
Yeah, it's a big question, Dan, and this is reaching those folks that I'll give you a story. My second company, I was in my early 30s, and from the outside looking in, I was making over 7 figures a year. I have a beautiful wife, 2 young kids that are healthy. Everything looks amazing. But here's what was really going on. My wife and I were almost on the verge of divorce. We were separated for a year. I was almost 300 pounds at the time. And so if you're to ask that kid at the time, what's really going on? What he would say is, I am so burnt out and fried, and I don't every day I wake up and I don't want to go to the job I'm going to. I think there's so many people, Dan, that are going through this right now because they're on that verge of burnout. They don't know what really fuels their engines, or they've lost track or sight of that. And now they're ashamed to even admit that, gosh, I'm not operating at my highest level. What I would say to that person is, what really does get you going outside of your profession? Is it your family? Is it your faith? Is it your hobbies? And are you actually checking in and doing that? Because so often when you're driven and motivated, as you said, that's the beauty of the ego, right? There are some incredible doctors that are driven, they're building successful practices, but are you also taking care of some of these other parts of your life, such as your health or your faith or your hobbies, your adventure, your relationships? And oftentimes that's what gets lost in the mix, is because of our drive, because of our ambition, because of all these responsibilities that have accumulated in a very short period of time. It's like, uh-oh, now what? And so what I would ask them to do is get quiet for a little, just, it doesn't have to be a long period of time, but get quiet with your mind and say, what am I feeling? What am I missing? What is it that would really get me going? Let's just say I love to golf, and yet because of all these pressures, I stopped golfing a year ago because I can't, because I have to. And I hear that I have to all the time. These are all choices. Ultimately, if golfing makes you a better spouse, uh, business partner, husband, father, all those things, if that makes you, then go golf, for goodness sakes. But oftentimes I hear people say, well, I can't, I don't have time. I'll do that when. And then sometimes that win never comes. So I think what it looks like, Dan, is if you're constantly negative, you're probably on that verge of burnout. If you're not feeling excited when you wake up to go to the job, which I know it's never going to be perfect, but you probably are on that verge of burnout. And that's where I would say, get quiet and figure that out. And if you can't figure it out on your own, find a coach that someone can say, you know what? Let's talk so we can help you get to a place of fulfillment again.
Priceless advice. Thank you for sharing that. And tell me, um, I hope our doctors are going to share this with their team. How would your team recognize that you might be suffering and have that radical transparency to let you know, as the doctor, that you have some of the signs of that burnout or exhaustion?
Yeah. The negativity is the first thing. When you see somebody constantly negative, I don't believe by nature most people ever want to be negative. They're negative through a set of circumstances, right? Maybe they have a sick child at home. Maybe they don't believe in the senior leadership. Maybe they just, maybe they're going through a health crisis. So being negative is one of the first things. The other thing is, you'll notice if you talk to them, who are they surrounding themselves with? Do they have somebody lifting them up? And this is the hard one for people to really grab, but it's just, I gotta say, because it is what it is. When you look at the people, and this won't be the first time you hear it, won't be the last. The 5 people you surround yourself with the most. I believe there's 2 things. People either lift you up or they bring you down. I really don't think there's a middle ground. And what I've found when I talk to, thousands of people over the years that are going through this, they're surrounding themselves by people that are constantly bringing them down. And here's the challenge. It could be those really close to them. It could be inside of their family. It could be mom or dad. And oftentimes we don't want to look at that, but that's a reality. So if you see a teammate that's struggling, they're showing up late, they're negative. When you talk to them, it's just they have nothing to really look forward to. Do yourself the practice and that person a favor and say, would you like to talk? Can we just give them that outlet, if nothing else. Don't try to solve the problem for them, but allow them that chance to do that. So that's being a good teammate, and it is something that is very, very prevalent. So I'm hoping if you're listening and you see somebody, take the time to just pull them aside and say, "Hey, I just wanted to check in with you. How are you doing?" That question can mean the world to somebody, especially if they're suffering in silence.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And this needs to be shared with teams so that they can help support each other. Now I'm going to take that same scenario and I'm going to flip it. It's going to be 180 degrees different. And the reason why I'm sharing it with you, JM, is because it was me when I was a young dentist. Our stories are very, very similar. I'm a young dentist. I start out, I have an orthodontic practice where I see patients a half a day with one person in the office with me. Within about 6 years, all of a sudden, we're seeing 156 patients a day in my orthodontic practice. This thing is going. And shortly thereafter, I'm told I have the largest privately held practice in the country. I've got people visiting, getting speaking gigs, traveling around, teaching clinical. Like, everything is perfect on the outside. There wasn't one drop of burnout that I felt, no exhaustion. I was living on adrenaline. And the more I got, the more I wanted. It was like drinking salt water, where it just made me want more and more. It wasn't accumulative like money. It was realizing these maybe milestones that I was looking to achieve. How would you advise colleagues and teammates of doctors to recognize that problem? Because it led to same kind of problems with marriage that led to divorce, weight gain. The only thing that stopped me was having a life-threatening health problem at the age of 30 from just working yourself into the ground, but no burnout. Internally feeling it was just killing me, literally, but couldn't stop.
Yeah, Dan, and this is literally the $1 million question every coach talks about, because we want to help folks, whether you're a doctor or an executive, we want to help them avoid the heart attack, the stroke, the divorce, the major life event that takes place. Here's what I advise. Once a quarter, take 2 to 3 days and just detox from technology. If you can get away and really just be with you and check in, because it's amazing. You talked about that dopamine hit that you're receiving every time that you have more patients coming through, or you get on stage and people are telling, "Dan, you're amazing. We love you. Gosh, more, more, more." Well, what is Dan doing for Dan? Right? What if I could talk to you back at that time? I would ask one question. "Hey, Dan, what did you do for yourself today?" And here's the challenge that I hear from most doctors. "I take care of the house, the kids, the dog, the email, the practice, it's a litany of things." And I said, no. What did you do for you? And this is where I think people can really just slow down for a moment, take that 2 to 3 days per quarter and just be with you. Now, be with your family if that makes you feel better, that's fine, but just really stop and evaluate where you're at. And oftentimes what you might figure out is, you know what? I really don't like traveling that much. I like to help people, of course, but maybe I could be doing this on YouTube now instead of going across the country to speak. And so it's really just aligning yourself with what you want out of life. But oftentimes the only way to do that is to slow down. And that's how I actually created Let's Go Win. It was a 3-day silent meditation where I was on a mountain with a gallon of water in a tent. The entire Let's Go Win came from that experience. And I'm talking to myself too, Dan, while I'm doing this, because I'm also a hard charger. I need to remind myself to do the same thing. Check in every quarter, and you'll be amazed at what you figure out along the way. Like, oh, maybe I don't need to be running so hard. And here's the crazier part. when you do that, you get more aligned, even more abundance comes your way without necessarily all the effort.
Two brothers talking to each other right now. Please tell me, is it possible to control that addiction to the adrenaline? Is it still in you? I'll just tell you it's in me. I'm just going to put it right out there. You're the radical transparency guy. It's still there. The difference is I'm aware of it now and try and control it. Tell me about you. Is it still in there?
Oh yeah. No, it's that dopamine spike, that getting that feeling, go, build, 100%. So here's what I would say. You said awareness, and I think that's a beautiful thing. I've set up every day my 40 minutes of non-negotiables. That this is what tames it for me, Dan. So I wake up and I do 11 minutes of breath work, then I do 11 minutes of meditation, then I do 11 minutes of yoga, then I do 7 minutes of qigong. That's my 40 minutes of sacred time. But what that does is it grounds me to say, I want to still drive hard. I mean, shoot, I have all the projects I'm doing today, plus the companies I advise. Like, I'm not working hard, but I'm also working extremely intentionally, because when I do that, now it aligns with my most important thing in life, which is freedom. I have the freedom of whatever, for me, it's time, energy, and money. So to answer your question very directly, it's always in there. Look, you are wired how you're wired, and don't be ashamed of that. And have some self-awareness, as you said, Dan, to know that, here's some tools I'm going to do so I don't hit that health scare, or I don't run my marriage into the ground, or whatever the challenge is. So yeah, man, I run pretty hard as well, but I definitely check in on a daily basis.
Do you feel like it's one way to control it is to constantly say, I'm making the choice to do this. I don't have to do it. It's a choice. I know that's my answer. When people say, why are you blank? I'll say, it's a choice. I decided this is what I want to do. Or is that a rationalization?
No, it's profound. I mean, it's one of my favorite lessons. You're choosing to be a victor, not a victim, right? You don't have to. The truth is, we only have to do 5 things: eat, breathe, drink, sleep, and eliminate waste. Like, as a human being, those are the only 5 things you have to do. Everything else, to your point, Dan, it is so profound what you said. It is a choice. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to go to work. There's repercussions, right? You don't have to do, I hear it all the time. I have to. No, you don't. That is a choice. And you're choosing to make it. Good news is you can choose to make another choice, a better choice for your family, for yourself. So I think it's really profound what you said, Dan. And I love that's why you're so remarkable, that you own it, right? I chose this, good, bad, or indifferent. I get to own that. And I get to look myself in the mirror and know I get to choose again the next day and the next day. So yeah, I think it's pretty amazing.
Well, thank you for the kind response. JM, I've got this question for you. I've got 2 more questions for you, and I have to get these in. They're self-serving because I want to know. Every time I see you, you look like you just came back from vacation. You never look tired. You never look worn out. And you just have like a peace of mind. And I know you juggle a lot. What's the secret? Because to our audience who's looking at you on video, everybody knows Zoom has the ability to do touch up. You look just like this in person. Thank you for treating me to lunch in Boca Raton. How do you do it?
Well, I guess live in Florida. No, just kidding. No, it is being intentional, Dan. I mentioned the 4 sacred things that I do, the 40 minutes of sacred time. To me, that is filling me up every single day, no matter how I woke up. Because just like anybody, you wake up and you have great days, and you wake up and you have bad days. I don't know anybody that's batting 1,000, waking up and just, gonna always be great. But being really intentional about that and saying it is a choice that I'm going to do. So those 40 minutes of sacred time. And here's the other thing I would say. I journal. We have these incredibly brilliant minds. They're also wildly destructive. And the point of this is, and especially with really cerebral doctors, they get in their heads so often. I'm like, can you just take 5 minutes and just get it out, brain dump it out? Because here's the truth, it's not good or it's not bad. It's just doing this constantly. And so I use that as another tool for me every morning and typically in the evenings, that I just dump it out so that I can show up as the best version of me, not thinking about what if last week or what's coming up. But so that brain dump, I think, is one of those cheat codes in life, is just journal.
I think that's a missing piece that a lot of us have, that journaling. And that may be part of your secret sauce for always seeming to be at peace. When you look at what is the greatest blessing that you can receive, and I put peace right up there at the very top. And for somebody who does as much as you do and who's been through the things that you shared with us today, and I know there's more, we'll podcast again, that you still have found a way to find peace throughout all of this. And I admire it greatly. I'll just say I'm envious, and it's aspirational.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate it. And I take that very sincerely. I really appreciate that.
All right, here is the doozy. I would like for you to share what it is about you or what you've done that has made your mom most proud of you.
Oh, that's a great question. Here's what I would say. That if my mom were, I'd be interested. I'm going to ask her that question now that you say that. I don't know the answer. I will give you my answer that I think. I am unapologetically me. I was raised by my two amazing parents that they raised me to be an independent thinker and to be me. And I choose that every single day, very, very in integrity. And it's cost me opportunities at times, but I can look in the mirror and be really proud of who I am and what I stand for. So that's my answer. And now, Dan, you've given me homework. I'm going to ask my mom because it's a very important question, and I don't know the true answer. But that's me diving into Lynn Ryerson's head, and I'm curious to hear her answer.
It's your radical transparency, brother. You could have totally made up an answer, and instead you told us the truth. So I believe that is now an obligation upon you to have another appearance on the show so that you can share that. Just for our audience, I told JM before we started, I said, I'm going to ask you two questions that you've probably never been asked before, but I'm not telling you in advance because I don't want you to think about it while we're talking. I'll save them for the end. So thank you so much for giving us the most precious asset you have, JM, and that is your time. And that when you give us your time, I know it's something I could never give back to you. You spent it with us. We're grateful. You didn't waste a second of our time. You were open. You were vulnerable, as you said. You shared. You didn't hold anything back. For that and for your friendship, I am so incredibly grateful. Please accept my heartfelt gratitude.
Dan, I thank you. I hear every word you say because you are also a man of high integrity and you're so authentic. So I just thank you for allowing me the opportunity. You trust me with your company, which is incredible. You trust me to be on your show, and that does not go unnoticed. So to you and your family, I enjoy every time I get a chance to give you a big hug. But brother, just spending time around you, that you are so humble and you've accomplished so much, and yet you're just an incredible man. So thank you for the time, and I'm truly I appreciate being here.
Thank you for joining us on Deep Dives with Dr. Dan, powered by orthobrain. We hope today's episode challenged your thinking, inspired your leadership, and helped you reimagine what's possible inside your practice. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if something resonated, please share it with a colleague or with your team. So until next time, let's keep diving deeper.